Not yet live, but we are now. Here we go. So, Thomas, it is Monday morning. It is time for EuroAsia Scrum. I can find the right screen, and I can. And Thomas, yes. What's up in your part of the world?
Yeah, so I just noticed that I'm a little low on batteries. So hopefully the phone won't die on me.
Right.
But this weekend, we focused a little bit on the Take Me Away project.
Right.
Had a dev meeting on Saturday. We had a great discussion about the domain, and we scaffolded some of the requirements, what we need to do in terms of what models we will generate, and we talked about some principles about testing, stuff like that. A lot of these discussions are the kind of discussions that are very important at the beginning of the project, so we don't run into some issues later on, basically. But it was a really good discussion, and we have a working plan how to move ahead with everything. So and Raul is taking a lead on this project, doing great work. So I'm very happy about this. Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
And that was, I did some coding, some pair programming. I personally submitted 2 small pull requests to the project, and the other guys are also moving ahead. So that's cool. That's cool. And I also saw and evaluated a pull request, a patch request from Alejandro. So I'm going to merge it in this morning to push it out. He implemented a cache solution for the members page, basically to boost performance. We ran into some issues with his migrations last week, so we fixed this over the weekend. So this code is not up in production yet, but I will be pushing it out later today.
Cool.
And I couldn't make the dev meeting on Friday, but I gave Raul some talking points, and I know that he hosted that meeting, so it was great. So we're moving ahead with the Website 1 project as well. And sometimes this week, Sam, if we could coordinate a quick client meeting, that would be good. It's not crucial, but I think it would be a good thing just to prioritize some stories.
Good idea to me. Yep, excellent.
That's all for me.
Nice one. Yeah. So I was largely I was fighting off a cold last week, and I was largely in bed over the weekend. I think I'm just about just about there, hopefully. But yeah, so we didn't have a LocalSupport client meeting. We didn't have a LocalSupport retrospective. I did deploy the new functionality, the new interface. Then I also spent some time working on a couple of requests for the client for LocalSupport. She wants the email text switch back, which I think is a fairly easy change, although in the long run I would just love. Well, it's either set up something so that she can easily edit the email stuff or properly integrate with MailChimp. But I think probably she just wants to switch back to how it was before, so that's a fairly easy change. The interesting, I basically was working on this map legend thing that one of the Maker's students had been working on, and I was not so kind of the place that he'd put the code. I've just been playing around with it. I sort of moved it around. I wasn't. He kind of sort of did it, and then Mike was giving him some feedback, and then he sort of dropped off the face of the earth, as people do. I wasn't sort of doing a detailed review of it and just trying to fix up a couple of things. I think the placing of it could be in delay. So I started to move it around and started to add in an additional what's the word? Started to add in an additional element to the legend, and I've started to get into this issue of there is something missing in my understanding of CSS. It always behaves slightly differently than how I expect. I've now got it sort of doing what I want it, but it kind of brings up to me this sort of general issue about, there's a general issue of, we, in order to learn things and understand things, we all build models in our head of how things work. And I know over time, my model of how Ruby works under the hood, has been getting better and better, or at least, occasionally I will find something that doesn't make sense, and then I'll learn about, for example, class instance variables as being different from class variables and instance variables, and understand their properties, and then once again, the behavior of the system will be predictable. But something I've been making some progress with CSS, but I think still something about the relationship between the elements is like a fundamental thing for me is still missing, and I feel like this is a good thing to kind of really, you know, try and nail down that. So I'm keen to do that. Anyway, yeah, there's other things. So this week is kind of the lab week for makers, and so we've got a lot of meetings planning the next 6-week run of the course. I'm planning to spend a bit more time on Thursday on, you know, really going to the bottom of things for local support and doing our getting started hopefully on our own which is the key thing. It's really, there's only a month left of I've forgotten what they're called there. What's their name again? Ninefold. Yeah. So yeah, that's about it really. That's from my side. Anything else we need to coordinate, Thomas, or are we all good for the moment?
Yeah, I dropped out for a second because my battery died, so I just rejoined. Yeah, no, I think I'm all covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if you just the thing that interests me about CSS is that I don't know, maybe it's not time to go right. I'm going to. It's this relationship between, you know, it seems like you need to float things in order to align them horizontally or what have you. But as soon as you do float them, they stop maintaining any like vertical height. So like, I don't know if you can see here this little box that I've got.
Yeah.
Like the box with this thing. It doesn't look very good at the moment. But the thing I've been struggling with it is, you know, I want the icon to line up on the if I float them, then the width of them, you know, is respected. If I don't float them, then the width is ignored. And you know, there's an inverse relationship with the, you know, whether the surrounding box will actually, you know, maintain their. I don't know if you feel that you've got kind of. I mean, I think you've always been better at CSS than me.
Yeah, but this is a little bit, you know, stretching my knowledge on CSS actually. Unfortunately. However, I feel that, I don't know. Let's see. Is that okay? All right. I see you use the legend and row tag.
Well, this is the other thing I've been experimenting with. I mean, the original version of this was exclusively divs, and I've been experimenting with trying to make it more semantic. I mean, there is a meme, shall we say, in Makers that says, really, we should be avoiding using hundreds and hundreds of divs, and we should be trying to use, you know, semantic element names to say what things are.
I agree. I agree with that. However, since we are using Bootstrap in this project, I think the best way to do, in order you know, Bootstrap allows you to be responsive, you know, and so I would say, you know, as a precaution, just to stick to the syntax and the, you know, the divs.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. We're in a Bootstrap context here, and so I should be referring to Bootstrap. Classes. I mean, that's the person who did this sort of created their own set of unique things that are not.
Yeah, which is completely fine usually in all projects, even using you know, Bootstrap. However, I would say that, you know, if you create your own classes, then you have to consider that what will happen if the you know, when the browser windows is resized and yes, so usually what you want to do, you want to build upon Bootstrap classes, basically. You know, CSS, that's very easy to do. So yeah. However, in Take Me Away, we will be using Bourbon, which is because what I feel, and the general idea is that Bootstrap gives you like everything, and you have to pull in the whole enchilada basically. While in Bourbon, you can cherry pick what classes you want to use, and you can do that in Bootstrap to a certain extent as well, if you know the framework very well. But it feels like it gives the developer a better, you know, better control of what classes are you going to use, and you know, remember everything so you can actually reuse stuff. Usually, I know when I've been working with Bootstrap a lot before, it's you know, since I haven't you know, read through the entire library, and you know, so sometimes when I want to do something, I tend to develop my own class, and then after a while I notice that shit, there was already something that
Yeah.
you know that had this similar behavior
Right.
in the main library in Bootstrap. So you know, but yeah, so. But I'm not answering your question because I just simply don't know what to do.
You have a very relevant point, and in fact, a lot of people, makers, are starting to use. I mean, Bootstrap is being used less and less, is my sense, or at least certainly people are experimenting with other different frameworks. Also, we're redoing the Maker's site, and there's a program for us to do our own custom grid layout. We've got a new guy who's also called Sam. And he gave a presentation on CSS last week, and he was talking about the box element model, which is not just a, well, obviously CSS has like a box element model generally, but it's this idea that you should name your classes in this kind of object-oriented fashion. I don't know if you've seen it. I'm not looking at it superficially. It seems very verbose. I'm not so. It's sort of called. There's a box element which is the standard thing, which is boxes, but then it's BEM syntax thing. Oh, like so, and then there's this called smacks. So there are these kind of like, see this? Can you see that? Have you seen this before?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you end up with these class names that have like double underscores and double hyphens in them and so on. And so that's a whole nother side of things. Yeah.
My first thought when I see this is like, every code should be written so, if I go and die or something, somebody else can just come in and pick up the code and understand what's been going on. That's one of the main principles, I think.
Sure.
You have to write.
I think it should be self-explanatory. Yes.
Yeah, and I feel that if you introduce a lot of deviations from the HTML tags and basic CSS. Syntax and how you do things. If a new developer comes in, he might have a hard time understand that. Well, but if they are very verbose, then of course, yeah.
But I think this is this is sort of this BEM and Smacks thing. They're proposals for things to build on top of the existing CSS and HTML. And I think I'm not knowledgeable enough in CSS to really assess. I just looking at it in terms of the amount of screen real estate and the amount of repeated words made it seem like surely there's a better way, or at least I was thinking the semantic HTML approach was the recommended. But I think that the interesting thing that this issue that comes up in the context of local support here for me is just that I mean, I think your advice is absolutely right. I think in the context of local support, I need to look at the bigger picture. I think for like learning materials, which is partly what I'm thinking about, is there does seem to be, at least based on my experience, I mean, I've used lots of the layout things like building, like Android and iPhone, both have systems for laying out, screen real estate. To me, seem, like I feel like I understand much better than I understand CSS. They have certain layout types that you do, and then like in a certain layout type, things will be added in a grid, and in a certain type they'll be added. And I think I understood conceptually the model, and I generally didn't have much trouble getting them to do what I wanted. With CSS, there's something that I think relates to this, the floating and the block in the display block and the display inline. I think recently I feel like I'd really nailed the block and the different display options. But there's now about the relationship in which float impacts whether items are contained within each other and so on. There's some aspect of the way in which CSS I think works at the base that I'm not 100% clear on, and what I want to make is, I mean, I think what I want to do here is extract from this. Where's it gone? I want to extract from this so that we're not doing it in the context of Bootstrap, to kind of underline that there's some sort of trade-off there in CSS that I haven't quite nailed down. Anyway, that's so I'm going to.
But basically, what you want to do here is you want to display this element over. Should it be underneath the map, or do you?
Yeah, no, I think it's, well, the other thing that I've discovered is I think you can do custom legends that go inside the map. I think
yes,
the amount of text that we have involved, and the clients approved it. it's going under the map is absolutely fine. The issue was that there was, in the first instance, there was just a sort of a single icon, and the client said, well, maybe if we display the two types of icons. And so I wanted to create effectively like a small table. And so I want to do like a little miniature grid system there, so that it's a map legend. And I've been reading various stuff about different ways, and I can see lots of people say, so this is you can do a custom legend in Google Maps. But I've been reading all about different sorts of layouts and so on, and reading the arguments between different developers about, no, you should be using a table, oh, you should be using a div, this, that, and the other. Yes, but I think it's focused me down on this issue of, I think I don't quite understand. What seems counterintuitive to me is that the width that I specify for an element does not seem to have any impact until I float it, if you know what I mean.
But okay, so what happens? What can happen is that the width can be dependent on some other class that you have already,
right,
on that div. So you need to, one way to see if that will ever have an impact is to add this bang important attribute to this.
Sam was talking about that the other day. Yes.
Yeah. So and that's a workaround. I use it sometimes. It's a lazy way to just overwrite the previous class. For instance, if an H1 says that it's going to be this and that font in the body, in the entire document, and you want to use another font on an H1 tag someplace, you just give it a font and this bang important attribute, and that overwrites it. So you can do that in the console. Just mark this.
Well, I've been playing. This is the thing. I've been playing this. The thing is here. In order to get these, actually, interestingly, having called this legend, I think it may have inherited a whole load of styles from Bootstrap, but that's another story.
Probably, yeah.
So here, this is now. See, if I've got the width here, in this context, when it's floating, the width will, have the effect that I expect it to. But if I turn the float off, then any change to the width has no impact. You see.
But most probably because this one is contained within another div that is a row. You see, you have a container.
Yeah, no, it's inside.
Oh, no, it's inside of that one. Yeah, okay.
It is. It's inside of this one. But it's. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying. I'm sure that there's a reason for it in CSS, but more, it seems to me like fundamentally, like it. If you specify the width of an element. Yeah, you would expect that width to be respected.
Yeah.
Right? You would not expect to have to specify some additional behavior in order for the width to be respected.
Yeah, but could you check the class of map container, the 2 rows up?
Yes.
Just click that. Does that have a width on it?
It has.
It has a 90%
right,
width.
but that affects the width overall of this entire.
Yeah.
And I've got that to match the one at the top, but. Again, if I've got multiple elements within this one, I mean, maybe it's just the fact that the pixels. So here, like, if we don't have float, maybe this needs to be, I don't know, 10% or something. But you see them like.
Yeah, it doesn't affect you.
And it may be that there's some strange thing going on. But I've kind of encountered this before. And the interesting thing is that once we have the float on, if I now have I had to add for this map container, I had to add, where's it gone? I added a height to it. This is the thing before, is that when I switch these elements, see this key image here, when I switch this to be floating, let me turn the float back off. And I think that was the float, and this one. Is that also, well, it seemed before that when I was switching the floating on and off, that affected whether the broader box looped around those things. So there was sort of like this weird set of the interactions going on, and I'm not trying to point to any flaw in CSS. Pull this out and really understand this relationship between float and width.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we'll leave it there and have a great day.
All right. Stick to Barra CS Bootstrap, you know, because you know you can get that with. I saw that you set it on 90% because you wanted to match the map.
Yes.
But basically, I mean, there is a reason why the map is it has the width that it has.
Yes.
So I would say it's another row with some span of you know, 4 or 5 columns or whatever, you know. So,
yeah, you can see here, like, well, that's we've got a span 6 thing, and the map container is inside that, and it's taking up 90.
Exactly. So what I would do down below, I would just open a new row and create another div with the span 6, and you know, just give that particular span, you know, create a custom class and give that a border, so you can get this border box, you know, and then put some elements inside of that.
Yeah, I think your fundamental advice, which is like trying to understand the surrounding Bootstrap, makes a lot of sense. So thank you. Nice one.
At least in this project, you know, because but it's a different thing if you build something new. Then you can play around with those classes and you know, create custom classes from to start with, and then you're better off, because then you have basically control over your own code, right? But here, since we are so heavily invested in Bootstrap, I would say that's the right thing to do.
Indeed. Nice one. All right, Thomas, I'll catch you up.
Absolutely. Take it easy.
Bye for now.
Cheers.